Good morning, everyone. I'm back up on the mountain this morning, switching around some trail cameras, changing out batteries and memory cards, just the normal maintenance. I use these trail cameras a lot in my never-ending search for wildlife to photograph. It's one of many methods that I use, and if you're interested in seeing some of the other methods that I use to find wildlife, I'll put a link to another video in the description below. You can check it out after this video if you're interested. In this week's video, I wanted to take you along with me in a real-life example as I set out and show you step by step one of my favorite methods of finding wildlife to photograph. This is a tried and true method for both species that I've photographed before and also species that I've never photographed or even seen before, and that's what we'll be doing in this week's video. Rather than just talk about it in front of the camera here, I'm actually going to take you along with me as we head out and search for a new species that I've never photographed. I'm so excited for this week's video. I'm all done here, so without further ado, let's just jump right into it. Like I mentioned, for this example, I'm going to be using a species that I've never photographed or even seen before, so I really hope that it works out, because if it doesn't, well, that would just be silly. But I found that with this manner of finding wildlife, if I put the time into it, it's extremely reliable, and the results are usually really good. The species I'm going to be focusing on this week to find and photograph are muskox, a species I've always wanted to photograph. So without any more rambling, let's get down off this mountain and get to work. The first step that I take when looking for an animal, especially one that I haven't seen before, is turning to my books. My goal during this step is finding out everything I can about the species I'm looking for, what they eat. This can change at different times of the year, their preferred habitat, migration patterns, natural predators, and any other information I can find. Once I've accumulated all the information I can find, it's time to turn to my maps. Many of these books provide basic maps that show general locations of where these different animals can be found. Many books even provide specific locations where you can look for different species. There are so many resources to use both in books and online. Once I've narrowed down a specific location from these species maps, I'll turn to topographical maps or terrain maps to better dive into that area before I scout it to know where I want to focus my search for these different animals. I've had a lot of people ask me why I prefer to use books over online resources or forums, things like that. As I mentioned earlier, there is so much easily accessible information online. Almost anybody, anywhere can access the exact same information that I can with just a few clicks of a mouse. What this usually means for me is when I turn to these resources online and then go out searching for wildlife based on the information that I found online, I usually find a lot more people along with the wildlife. Alternatively, when I turn to my books and maps and choose a few spots to start scouting, I usually find a lot less people along with the wildlife. I also find that I gain a better overall understanding of the animal's specific habitat requirements as I research and explore this way, which is more helpful in the long run. Much of this information would take me a lot longer to acquire and understand if I simply Googled where to photograph muskox. This method that I use can be a lot more time intensive up front and require a lot more scouting out in the field to find animals at times, rather than just going online and following the first few promising leads that I find. But I found that in the long run, because of the overall knowledge that I'm gaining by researching and finding wildlife this way, I find that I can go into almost any landscape and pinpoint where the animals are likely to be. I don't say this to sound prideful by any means, but there is a definite advantage that comes when you truly understand the animal and how they relate and interact with their habitat. It's worth the time, I promise you. Put the time in and it'll be well worth it. I've looked at a lot of maps both in my books and online, and I've narrowed my search down to a few very specific locations. Now it's time to turn back to the computer and see if muskox are actively hunted in any of these areas. This will change and affect how tolerant they are when I'm trying to photograph them. Not to say that I never photograph animals if they're hunted in a specific area. I just like going into that area knowing how the animal is likely to react when they see me. After a lot of research, I've selected an area I'm going to start exploring to look for muskox. I've secured my plane tickets, and tomorrow I'm headed up to the Arctic. I am so excited. This is an area of the world I've always felt drawn to, and this is a species I've wanted to photograph since I was just 6 or 7 years old. So this is literally, for me, a dream come true. I cannot express how excited I am. All the research and preparation that I've done to this point is over, and now it's time to make it happen.
Oh my goodness, we are here in the Arctic and it feels so amazing. This is a lifelong goal of mine that's finally coming to pass, and I can't even tell you how awesome it feels out here. It is just beautiful. I am loving it so far. I'm so excited. Now that we're here, we can start our search for the muskox, our actual search. Using all the research that I put together before, I'm going to use all that information to start combing through the landscape to see if I can find some terrain features that would attract muskox. We've got a water source here. I'm going to start looking for different food sources, footprints, scat, hair, essentially all of the things. I read that this time of year the males will butt heads as they try to attract females, and they make a sound that's akin to the roar of a lion even. So I'm going to start listening for that as I make my way through the landscape to see what we can find. And again, we can finally put all that research that we did in those books and online, all of that, we can put it to use and see what we can find out here. Let's get going, see what we can find. Up there in the fog, I just caught a glimpse of my very first muskox. He's up on that ridge line where the fog's coming in now. He's obscured, but he was headed this way. He's going this way, so we're gonna make this quick, and I'm gonna book it, see if I can get in front of him and photograph him as he's coming towards me. It just feels amazing. I cannot express what I'm feeling right now. Literally, a lifelong goal or dream of mine is finally happening. This is incredible. I'm gonna be out here for the next 3.5 days, hopefully photographing these beautiful animals and whatever else I can find out here. Follow along on the channel on the coming videos as I unfold and share with you this actual adventure as it happens. I am so excited to be out here. I hope you've enjoyed this week's video as I've taken you along with me and actually showed you a step-by-step process of one of my favorite methods of finding wildlife rather than just sitting in front of the camera and talking about it. That's one of my favorite ways of learning, is seeing something done. So I hope this week's video has been useful for you. Let me know what you think in the comments below. It's that time of year again where I've got my wildlife calendars available for sale. These calendars this year have been so much fun putting together. I've got some really fun options available for you that I've put together. I'm really excited about them. I'll put a link to them in the description below, and I want to sincerely thank each of you that picks up these calendars. It really helps support my work. It keeps me doing what I love doing, which is sharing these amazing places and wildlife with you and so many other people. Thank you so very much for your support. I sincerely thank you. I gotta zip it and head up here, see if I can find this guy. That's what we're out here for. Let's go see if we can find him. Thank you so very much for following along this week. We'll see you next time.